The emergency sirens were screaming so loud that every alien in the Galactic Council chambers had to cover their ears. Admiral Vexstar, a massive blue creature with 4 powerful arms, was hitting the control panel over and over again. His eyes were wide with panic as he stared at the big screen in front of him. Red lights were blinking everywhere. Colony after colony was showing the same terrifying message: everyone needed to get out right now. "I've been alive for 300 years, and I've never seen anything like this," whispered Ambassador Thrill OK. His purple tentacles were shaking so badly he could barely hold the data pad. Every few seconds, he would get another report from the outer colonies, and each one was worse than the last. "These things have claws that can cut through our strongest metals. Their teeth are like needles, but sharper. And the worst part? They work together like a military unit." The creatures causing all this chaos were not very big, only about 2 feet tall when they stood up. But size didn't matter when you were this dangerous. They had thick fur that came in different colors. Some were bright gold like the sun, others were dark brown like tree bark, and the scariest ones were completely black. When the lights went out, you could still see their eyes glowing like tiny green or yellow lanterns in the darkness. What made everyone so afraid was how these creatures moved. They didn't just run around wildly like most dangerous animals. No, these things were smart. Really smart. They would creep through the colony hallways without making a single sound. Their paws had soft pads that let them walk on metal floors without any noise at all. The colonists would be sleeping peacefully in their beds, and these creatures would already be inside their homes, watching them. "The reports from Colony Delta 5 are the most disturbing," said Commander Zilneth, his voice coming through the communication system from somewhere far away in space. His people were some of the bravest warriors in the galaxy, but even they sounded scared. "These creatures don't just attack randomly. They study us first. We have security camera footage showing them sitting in corners for hours, just watching our daily routines. They learn when we wake up, when we go to sleep, when we leave our homes. Then they strike at the perfect moment." The big screen in the council chamber started showing videos from the attacked colonies. Every alien in the room moved back from the screen, even though they knew the creatures couldn't actually reach them. The footage showed empty hallways that should have been full of families going about their normal lives. Instead, dark shadows moved along the walls. Sometimes you could see a pair of glowing eyes in a doorway, or the quick flash of sharp claws as one of the creatures disappeared around a corner. But the most terrifying part was the sound they made. It wasn't a roar like you'd expect from a dangerous predator. It was a low, deep rumbling noise that seemed to come from inside their bodies. The sound would travel through the metal walls of the space stations and make everything vibrate slightly. Colonists reported that this rumbling would start in the middle of the night and continue for hours. Nobody could sleep. Children would hide under their beds, crying. Adults would grab their weapons and search every room, but they never found anything. 7 complete colonies have gone silent in just the past week, Commander Zilneth continued, his voice getting more worried with every word. "That's over 50,000 people. We sent rescue teams to 3 of the colonies. The creatures weren't afraid of our laser weapons or our armed soldiers. In fact, they seemed curious about our technology. Some of them would sit and stare at our equipment like they were trying to figure out how it worked." The council members were getting more panicked by the minute. These weren't just wild animals they were dealing with. These creatures were intelligent, organized, and completely fearless. They had already proven they could take over entire settlements without any trouble. Admiral Vexstar stood up slowly, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. His species had been fighting wars across the galaxy for thousands of years, but his voice was shaking as he spoke. "We cannot let these creatures spread to the core worlds. If they reach the populated systems, billions of lives will be at risk." He turned to look at each council member. "I'm authorizing the use of antimatter charges. We'll destroy every colony world that's been infected. It's the only way to stop this invasion." The room fell completely silent. Everyone knew what antimatter charges meant. Those weapons could destroy entire planets. They had only been used 3 times in galactic history, and only when facing threats that could end all life as they knew it. Dr. Jake Morrison was sitting comfortably in his favorite chair on the human ship, slowly stroking his thick brown beard while he read through page after page of alien reports. The reports were filled with scary descriptions and blurry photos of these dangerous creatures that had everyone in the galaxy terrified. But instead of looking worried, Jake had a small smile on his face, like he was reading something funny rather than horrifying. Captain Lisa Reynolds walked over and looked at the computer screen over Jake's shoulder. She was a tall woman with short red hair who had been exploring space for over 15 years. Lisa had seen some pretty strange things during her travels, but she was curious about what was making Jake so relaxed when everyone else was panicking. She squinted at the biological data and the grainy security camera footage from the attacked colonies. "Well, I'll be damned," Jake said with a quiet laugh, shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The sound of his laughter came through the communication system loud and clear to the Galactic Council chambers. Every single alien in that room jumped back from their screens like Jake's laugh was somehow dangerous. Their eyes went wide, and they started whispering to each other in their own languages. They couldn't understand how any intelligent being could find their crisis funny. Admiral Vextar's blue skin turned an even darker shade of blue, which meant he was getting very angry. His 4 arms were clenched into fists as his voice came crackling through the speakers with obvious rage. "You find our extinction crisis amusing, human? 50,000 of our people are missing, and you think this is some kind of joke?" Lisa stepped forward and crossed her arms over her chest. She had learned long ago that when dealing with panicked aliens, you had to stay calm and speak clearly. "With all due respect, Admiral, I think there might be a big misunderstanding here. We'd like to ask for permission to go down to one of these planets and make direct contact with these creatures." The moment Lisa said the word contact, the entire alien council exploded into chaos. The sound coming through the communication system was like a zoo at feeding time. There were high-pitched clicking noises, low rumbling sounds, squeaks, chirps, and what sounded like several different types of screaming all mixed together. Some aliens were flapping their wings, others were waving their tentacles around frantically, and a few were actually running around in circles. "Contact? Are you completely insane?" Ambassador Thrilloke's purple tentacles were moving so fast they looked like they were dancing. "These are killing machines. Perfect predators. They have no fear and no mercy. You might as well ask permission to jump into a black hole." Jake calmly reached down to the floor next to his chair and picked up a large green duffel bag. He unzipped it slowly and started pulling out various small objects. The aliens watched in confusion as Jake placed several colorful cylindrical things on the table. Some of them had bright feathers sticking out of one end, others made soft tinkling sounds when he shook them, and a few had long strings attached. "That's exactly why we need to go down there," Jake said in the same calm voice he might use to discuss the weather. "Trust me, we've handled this exact situation before. Many times, actually." Captain Tom Baker, who was the mission commander, walked into the room just in time to hear the conversation. Tom was a short, stocky man with gray hair who had been in the space service for 30 years. He had the kind of face that never showed fear, even in the most dangerous situations. He nodded seriously as he looked at Jake's collection of strange objects. "We volunteer to land on whichever planet has the most of these creatures," Tom announced, his voice steady and confident. "All we need are basic supplies like food and water, plus these special tools that Jake brought." He picked up one of Jake's objects, a thin stick with a small gray mouse toy hanging from a string. The mouse looked incredibly realistic, with tiny whiskers and everything. The aliens stared at this scene with complete horror and disbelief. From their perspective, the humans were essentially volunteering for a suicide mission. They were talking about landing on a planet full of deadly predators armed with nothing but some colorful toys and what appeared to be fake mice on sticks. "This is madness," whispered one alien council member to another. The humans have clearly lost their minds. Maybe the stress of hearing about these creatures has broken their brains, suggested another alien. Should we try to talk them out of this? But Admiral Vextar was watching Jake's face carefully. There was something about the human's confidence that made him pause. In all his years of military service, the Admiral had learned to recognize the difference between foolish bravery and actual knowledge. Jake didn't look like someone who was about to do something stupid. He looked like someone who knew exactly what he was dealing with. Human Jake, Admiral Vextar said slowly, you speak as if you have encountered these creatures before. But our scientists confirm these beings exist nowhere else in known space. Jake zipped up his duffel bag and slung it over his shoulder. Oh, we've definitely dealt with creatures exactly like this. For thousands of years, actually. The only difference is, on Earth, we don't call them monsters. He paused and looked directly at the camera. We call them family. The human shuttle landed with a soft thud on the empty landing pad of Colony Theta 7. The entire place looked like something out of a horror movie. All the lights were off, and the once busy walkways were completely empty. Broken windows and scattered belongings told the story of people who had left in a big hurry. The three humans, Jake, Lisa, and Tom, stepped out of their ship and looked around at the abandoned colony. Up in space, dozens of alien ships were watching everything through their most powerful cameras. Every alien commander, scientist, and military officer in the fleet had their eyes glued to their screens. They were watching what they believed would be the last few minutes of these brave but foolish humans' lives. Some aliens were recording everything, thinking they would need evidence of how dangerous these creatures really were. Jake took a deep breath of the colony's recycled air and smiled like he was walking into his own backyard. Here, kitty kitty, he called out in a soft, gentle voice. Then he started making these weird clicking sounds with his tongue, the kind of noise you might make to get someone's attention, but much softer and friendlier. The aliens watching from space couldn't believe what they were hearing. Is the human trying to communicate with the predators? One alien whispered to another. Does he want to die faster? But something amazing happened within just a few seconds. Two bright golden eyes appeared in the darkness of a nearby doorway. Then more eyes appeared, green ones, yellow ones, and some that seemed to change color in the dim light. The creatures were coming, just like the aliens had feared, but something was different this time. One of the creatures stepped out into the light, and now the humans could see it clearly. It was exactly like the alien reports had described, about 2 feet tall, covered in beautiful golden fur, with those famous razor-sharp claws extended from its paws. The alien observers held their breath and got ready to watch these humans get torn apart. Instead, the creature started making that same deep rumbling sound that had terrified colonists across the galaxy. But now the humans weren't running away screaming. They were smiling like they had just seen their best friend. Oh, you're just a big sweetie, aren't you? Lisa said in the same voice someone might use to talk to a baby. She slowly got down on one knee and held out her hand, palm up, moving very carefully so she wouldn't scare the creature. The alien observers were certain they were about to witness a massacre. This creature could easily slice Lisa's hand off with one swipe of those deadly claws. But instead of attacking, the creature did something that made every alien watching question everything they thought they knew about the universe. The creature pulled in its razor-sharp claws completely, walked right up to Lisa, and gently bumped its furry head against her open palm. The rumbling sound got even louder, and now it didn't sound scary at all. It sounded almost happy. It's purring, Tom explained to the shocked alien observers who were listening through their communication systems. His voice was calm and patient, like a teacher explaining something simple to confused students. Those aren't hunting sounds or threat sounds. Those are happy sounds. It means the creature is content and peaceful. Jake got down on his knees as more and more creatures started coming out of their hiding places. Soon there were at least a dozen of them, all making that same rhythmic rumbling noise. The aliens had described this sound as terrifying, but hearing it now, it was actually quite soothing. Jake reached out and gently scratched behind one creature's ear, just like you might pet a dog. The creature's reaction was incredible. It closed its bright green eyes and leaned into Jake's hand, the purring getting so loud that the alien observers could hear it clearly through their communication equipment. Other creatures started gathering around the humans, all seeking the same gentle attention. "These aren't monsters, folks," Jake announced, looking directly up at the sky where he knew the alien ships were watching. "They're cats. Big space cats." As he spoke, he continued scratching behind the creature's ears, and it was obvious that this deadly predator was enjoying every second of it. Lisa stood up slowly, with two of the creatures now rubbing against her legs like oversized house cats. "Remember how your report said these creatures were infiltrating settlements? They weren't invading, they were looking for warm, comfortable places to sleep. What you called systematic infiltration was just cats being cats." Tom nodded and pointed to a small pile of what looked like dead local wildlife near one of the building entrances. "And those disturbing hunting displays you found? Those aren't threats or warnings. Those are gifts. It's how cats show affection. They bring you presents because they care about you." The alien observers were completely silent. Everything they had believed about these creatures was wrong. The coordinated pack hunting was actually just play behavior, like kittens chasing each other around. The studying prey patterns was simply cats being naturally curious about their environment, the way they always are. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lisa announced, spreading her arms wide as more and more creatures gathered around the three humans, all purring loudly and seeking attention, "meet humanity's oldest companions. We've been living with creatures just like these for over 10,000 years on Earth. The aliens watching from space were experiencing something that rarely happened in their advanced civilizations, complete and total shock. Everything they thought they knew about dangerous predators, about survival, about the nature of the universe itself, had just been turned upside down by three humans and a bunch of oversized house cats. In just a few short hours, the entire colony had completely changed. What had been described as a nightmare zone full of deadly predators now looked more like a peaceful park where families might come for a weekend picnic. The human team had worked quickly and efficiently, using supplies they had brought from their shuttle to set up what they called feeding stations throughout the colony. These feeding stations were simple metal bowls filled with something that smelled like fish and chicken mixed together. The creatures, these so-called monsters, were gathered around the bowls, eating politely and taking turns. There was no fighting, no aggressive behavior, just hungry animals enjoying a good meal. The aliens watching from their ships couldn't believe their eyes. Commander Mike Davis had arrived on a second shuttle with more supplies and a few extra team members. Mike was a big, friendly man with a thick mustache who had been working with animals his whole life. He was standing near one of the play areas the humans had created, watching something that would have given the alien council members heart attacks if they had hearts. One of the largest creatures anyone had seen yet, easily the size of a small earth dog but still shaped exactly like a house cat, was lying on its back right in front of Tom. The creature had all four paws up in the air and was showing its entire belly, which any military strategist would tell you is the most vulnerable part of any animal's body. Tom was gently rubbing the creature's stomach, and the purring sound it was making was so loud it echoed off the colony walls. "This is incredible," Mike said, shaking his head with a big grin on his face. "On Earth, we've lived with creatures exactly like these for over 9,000 years. We call them cats, and they're not just pets to us, they're family members." The alien observers were trying to process what they were seeing, but their brains couldn't handle it. Through their communication systems, they were asking each other questions in dozens of different languages, but nobody had any answers. Meanwhile, Jake had pulled out one of his feathered toys, a long stick with bright purple and blue feathers attached to the end with a string. He started moving it around in the air, making it dance and flutter like a small bird. The reaction from the deadly creatures was immediate and shocking. About 6 of them suddenly crouched down low, their eyes going wide as they focused completely on the moving feathers. Their pupils got bigger, and they started wiggling their back ends like they were getting ready to jump. Then, all at once, they pounced toward the toy, batting at it with their paws and tumbling over each other in their excitement. The aliens were watching these apex predators act like playful kittens, and their whole understanding of the universe was falling apart. But the claws, the teeth. Ambassador Thrill-OK managed to stammer through the communication system. His voice was shaky and confused, like someone who had just learned that everything they believed was wrong. "They're just tools," Lisa replied calmly. One of the creatures was rubbing against her leg so hard she had to brace herself to keep from falling over. "They use their claws for climbing trees and rocky surfaces. The teeth are for eating small animals like mice and birds. They're not weapons designed to destroy civilizations, they're just basic survival equipment." Lisa knelt down and let the creature rub its head against her hand. "It's like being afraid of someone because they carry a pocket knife. Sure, it could be dangerous if they wanted to hurt you, but mostly they just use it to open boxes and cut string." Captain Beth Mitchell, who was the team's animal behavior expert, was walking around with a small handheld scanner, taking detailed readings of the creatures. Beth had studied animal psychology for 15 years and had worked with everything from tiny birds to massive elephants. She was fascinated by what her equipment was telling her. "Based on what I'm seeing here," Beth announced to the alien observers, "these creatures evolved from a very successful predator species that learned to live cooperatively with other intelligent life forms. It's exactly the same evolutionary path that Earth cats took when they started living with humans thousands of years ago." She pointed her scanner at a group of creatures that were playing together, chasing each other around in circles. "Look at their behavior patterns. They're not hunting or fighting, they're socializing. They're building relationships with each other and with us. This is what happens when a predator species becomes domesticated." The transformation of the colony was now complete, and it was absolutely amazing. Where the alien reports had described unstoppable killing machines prowling through dark corridors, there were now happy creatures taking naps in the warm spots where sunlight came through the windows. Some were stretched out completely flat on their sides, others were curled up in little furry balls, and a few were even sleeping on their backs with their paws sticking up in the air. The play areas that Jake had set up were full of activity. Creatures were batting at hanging toys, chasing small balls that had bells inside them, and wrestling with each other in the most adorable way possible. Their razor-sharp claws were completely retracted while they played, just like Earth cats do when they're having fun with their friends. The alien observers were experiencing what humans call cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable feeling you get when new information completely contradicts everything you previously believed. These creatures weren't monsters at all. They were just cats who had been misunderstood by people who didn't know how to speak their language. Commander Mike Davis looked up at the sky, knowing the alien ships were still watching everything. "The funny thing is," he said with a chuckle, "this isn't even unusual behavior for cats. If anything, these space cats are probably better behaved than most of the ones we have back on Earth." Within just a few days, the story of what happened on Colony Theta 7 had spread to every corner of the galaxy. News reporters from hundreds of different worlds were calling it the day humans adopted an invasion, and the footage was being played on every major news network across known space. The videos showed these supposedly terrifying, razor-clawed monsters doing the most unmonster-like things imaginable, sleeping peacefully in human laps, playing with colorful toys, and purring so loudly that the sound equipment could barely handle it. Dr. Jake Morrison suddenly found himself the most famous human in the galaxy, which was not something he had been expecting when he woke up that morning a few days ago. The Galactic Council had officially appointed him as the first ever interspecies companion animal specialist, which was a fancy title that basically meant he was now the go-to guy whenever aliens encountered creatures they didn't understand. His communication device was buzzing constantly with messages from species all across the Outer Rim territories. "Jake, you're not going to believe some of these requests," Captain Lisa Reynolds said, scrolling through the dozens of messages that had come in just that morning. She was sitting in the human diplomatic ship, which had become a sort of temporary headquarters for what everyone was now calling the Cat Crisis Response Team. The Rigelians sent us detailed reports about what they're calling web-spinning nightmares, Lisa continued, pulling up holographic images of creatures that looked suspiciously like oversized spiders. They say these things have been invading their agricultural domes and creating massive web structures everywhere. The Rigelians are convinced they're planning some kind of coordinated attack. Jake looked at the images and started laughing. Those aren't invasion structures. Those are just spider webs. Big spider webs, sure, but still just webs. I bet these creatures are actually helping the Rigelians by eating all the bugs that would normally damage their crops. And get this, Lisa said, switching to another message. The Centaurians are asking for help with their fong-bearing tunnel dwellers. They sent video footage of creatures with long front teeth that keep digging holes all over their colony grounds. The Centaurians think they're trying to undermine their buildings. Let me guess, Jake said with another chuckle. They look like giant rabbits. Exactly like giant rabbits, Lisa confirmed. With really big front teeth and long ears. The Centaurians have been trying to fight them off for months, but the creatures just keep multiplying and digging more tunnels. Jake shook his head in amazement. Those fong-bearing tunnel dwellers are probably just trying to build homes for their families. And I bet those tunnels are actually helping to aerate the soil and make it better for growing plants. The transformation in how the galaxy viewed these situations was incredible. For hundreds of years, different alien species had been encountering creatures they didn't understand and immediately assuming they were dangerous. Now, thanks to the humans, everyone was starting to wonder if maybe they had been wrong about a lot of things. Admiral Vextar, who just a week ago had been ready to destroy entire planets to stop the invasion, approached Captain Lisa Reynolds with a request that would have seemed impossible before. The big blue alien looked almost embarrassed as he spoke. "Human Lisa," he said in his deep, formal voice, "I have been thinking about what happened here, and I have an unusual request. Would it be possible for some members of my species to adopt some of these creatures? For diplomatic purposes, of course." Lisa smiled as she watched Commander Mike Davis nearby, patiently teaching a group of young aliens how to properly pet one of the space cats. The alien children were being very careful and gentle, and the cat was purring loudly and clearly enjoying all the attention. "I think that can definitely be arranged, Admiral," Lisa replied. "But I should probably give you fair warning about something. Once you start living with cats, your whole life changes. There's an old saying on Earth, once you go cat, you never go back." And Lisa was absolutely right. Within a few months, the creatures that had once been called razor-clawed monsters were now officially classified in the galactic database as Felinis galacticus, though everyone simply called them space cats. They became the most popular companion animals in the entire known galaxy. Every species wanted them, and diplomatic missions started including space cats as gifts between allied worlds. But there was something interesting that everyone quickly discovered. While any species could learn to live with space cats, only humans seemed to naturally understand what the cats needed to be truly happy. Humans instinctively knew when a cat wanted attention, when it wanted to be left alone, when it was hungry, and when it was just being playful. Other species had to study thick instruction manuals and take classes to learn what humans seemed to know without thinking about it. The space cats also had some habits that confused other species but made perfect sense to humans. They would knock things off tables in the middle of the night, bring dead local wildlife as presents, and demand attention at the most inconvenient times possible. The aliens found these behaviors mystifying, but the humans just laughed and said, "Yep, that's cats for you." This whole incident completely changed how the rest of the galaxy viewed humanity. Before, humans had been seen as just another species among thousands of others. Now, they had a reputation as the most unpredictable species in known space, the ones who could look at any creature, no matter how scary or dangerous it seemed, and somehow find a way to become friends with it. Dr. Jake Morrison started giving lectures at universities across the galaxy, and he always ended his talks with the same message: there's no such thing as a monster, just a friend you haven't figured out how to talk to yet. It became one of the most famous quotes in galactic history, and it changed how countless species approached the unknown creatures they encountered in their explorations of the universe. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about making assumptions, and it was all thanks to some humans who knew how to speak cat.